All right, everyone, I'm excited to introduce my next guest, television producer and showrunner, four-time Emmy nominee, politically incorrect with Bill Maher, Paris Hilton's my new BFF, The Dish, Best Week Ever, and so much more. Please welcome to the show, Douglas Emma Wilson.
Hi, thanks for having me. Appreciate being here.
Great to have you. Great to have you. You have very eclectic. Is that like
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I've been all over the map.
what's sort of your origin story? Like, how did you even get into entertainment?
I was raised by a father who was obsessed with Broadway musicals and theater in general. And so I grew up, I'm from Buffalo originally, and I grew up taking these trips to New York where we'd go for the weekend and we'd see like Friday night show, Saturday matinee, Saturday night show, Sunday matinee, Sunday night show if there was one, and then we'd fly home to Buffalo. We'd do this a few times a year, and I'd see like 4 or 5 shows in a weekend. I was really well versed in theater by the time I graduated high school. And I did some theater in college. I went to Colgate University, had a good time there, wonderful experience there. And then I went to the Williamstown Theater Festival after I graduated college, which is a well-known theater festival in the Northeast. Paul Newman used to go there a lot, Christopher Reeve, a lot of various celebrities. And I realized while I was there, I wanted to get into theater. And I realized while I was there that if I wanted to direct in theater, my parents were going to have to support me for about another decade. And that just wasn't going to happen. So I moved to New York after that summer, and I was looking for work in advertising and television. And luckily, television came through first before advertising, because advertising, I think, would have chewed me up and spit me out. Television by default, because theater was too difficult to be a director. You have to apprentice yourself to a director, make no money, and do that for about 10 years before you can direct anything. And then you hope you get lucky with something good. But that wasn't going to happen. So television became my go-to. And I started out at MTV as someone's assistant, as Janet Scardino's assistant. She was the head of production management there at the time. Got to know some great people there. And then some people left the network or the networks because it was, MTV Networks. And three different people offered me jobs, and I chose one at the Comedy Channel. Back in the day, there was the Comedy Channel and there was Ha. And the Comedy Channel was owned by HBO, and Ha was owned by MTV Networks. And they were arch rivals. But I went to the Comedy Channel on the HBO side, and that eventually became Comedy Central. I worked in comedy coming up, and a lot of comedians did a lot of various shows. The theme behind the comedy, not the theme, but one of the things behind the Comedy Channel was that everybody in the staff could be on camera. Most of us in the office had our after cards. So I got my after card, and that's how I ended up doing voiceovers for Bill Maher eventually and things like that. Great fun. It was like a little playground, and I met a lot of great, great people that I'm still in touch with today. And then Politically Incorrect happened, and I jumped on that bandwagon. So that's how it all began.
Which Broadway shows do you remember the most or inspired you the most or did
Oh,
you love the most?
I directed one in college. I directed it's a little bitty show that nobody's heard of called A Day in Hollywood, A Night in the Ukraine, which I really liked. And the idea of it, it's the first half takes place in the lobby of the Grauman's Chinese Theater, and the second act is essentially a pastiche of a Marx Brothers movie. And that one had a great effect on me. Tommy Tune directed that, and I always liked his work. A lot of the Sondheim stuff. I'm reading a book about a biography of Sondheim right now, so a lot of Sondheim stuff affected me greatly. I saw right when I was in finishing college, I saw M Butterfly with John Lithgow and B.D. Wong on Broadway, which was a remarkable play. And then all the classics, like we saw, and not only did we go to Broadway a lot, but we saw everything that came to Buffalo. So all the classics, your Camelots and your My Fair Ladies and all that kind of stuff. So I grew up on that stuff and did all the high school musicals in high school and all that. I was a real drama dork, for sure.
I wasn't in drama specifically, but my parents took us to a lot of plays in the Detroit area as
Yeah.
they would come in. I think that one of the coolest things I've ever saw in New York was a long time ago. We saw Fosse with Ben Vereen, first row,
Oh, wow.
and then met him after, and no
Oh,
one
wow.
was there. We were like the ones that go wait after. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
get the
yeah,
other. Just I met him. I just he was just there.
yeah.
Took a photo with him with a real camera because this was that long ago, and
Right, right.
him doing Mr. Bojangles though. I mean,
Yeah,
like
I'm sure.
greatest
Yeah,
thing.
I saw him. I saw a lot of stuff. My parents exposed me to a lot of different theatrical stuff. a theater in the Round outside of Buffalo called Melody Fair. It's torn down now, but it was a theater in the Round where the stage rotated, and a lot of the nightclubs act went there. So I saw Ben Vereen do his nightclub act at Melody Fair in Buffalo. He was quite a performer. He was quite something. He gave it all to you.
Like we didn't realize we were front row because in
Right.
Detroit, A isn't front row.
Right.
That could be like row 12, whatever. I was like, ah. But we made up for it the next night with Gary Sinise. He was in a play. I mean, we were the last row.
Doesn't
But
matter. I've been in both. I've had good seats and I've had bad seats, so they all work out. I also saw at that Melody Fair, I saw Liberace, which I'm very proud of. Liberace, Tom Jones, like all the lounge acts of the day I saw. It was great to be exposed to that stuff.
that's amazing. So when you were at the Comedy Channel,
Yeah.
do you remember what some of those early shows?
Yeah, Rachel Sweet had a show. If you remember her on the Stiff label in Great Britain, she was an American, but she had a couple hits on the Stiff label in the UK, and then she became a comedian and a comedy writer. But she had a show. A guy named Tommy Sledge, who was kind of like a hard-boiled, like noir detective character, had a show. The Higgins Boys and Gruber, which was Dave Higgins, Steve Higgins, who's famous for being the kind of sidekick on Colbert and for being the head writer of Saturday Night Live forever now. Dave Gruber Allen, and they were really nice guys. And so Night After Night with Alan Havey, who was a big comedian at the time. I appeared on most of those shows in drag sometimes, whatever they wanted. It was like a big playground, and everybody was in the same office, so it was all I was milling about with comedy writers and comedians and people that were on camera all the time, and it was great fun. Great, I have great memories from that time.
Were some of these connections the ones that kind of helped you out later with Politically Incorrect and The
No,
Dish and all that?
well, yeah. I mean, a guy named Scott Carter was the producer of Night After Night with Alan Havey, and he went on to be the executive producer of Politically Incorrect, and so he hired me on there. I started as at Politically Incorrect as associate producer, and by the time I left, I was the showrunner at ABC. I was there for better part of a decade with Bill, so it was a long time.
So you knew Bill Maher before Politically Incorrect
I
from
did
this,
not.
or it just
I
kind
did
of
not.
happened?
I met him through Scott Carter. Started working for him. Bill and I hit it off really well. Bill can be a curmudgeon sometimes, as everybody who's ever seen him knows. No one has ever said kinder things about me or my talents than Bill Maher, and that is really redeeming. I will always have a fond spot in my heart for Bill because he was really kind with me. He also let me. We didn't agree on anything. I mean, we did agree on politics, of course, but we didn't agree on, like, he didn't believe in marriage, and I got married. Didn't believe in having children, and he thought I would be a good father. Didn't believe in religion, but when I converted to Judaism before I got married, he thought I was sincere about it, and that I had a reasonable view of religion, and that was okay. Didn't believe in therapy, and I have been in therapy since I was 10 years old. So, like, all these things he didn't believe in, I took part in, and he has a big enough heart and a big enough sense of generosity to kind of allow all those differences and still have a great working relationship and have a pleasant time together. I always appreciate him for all that. That was pretty special.
It's nice to hear that he is genuinely that way. I mean, that's how he, I think, tries to present himself as
Right.
I'm a Bill Maher fan.
Yeah, I am
I
too.
mean, occasionally he says stuff I'm like, oh, but
Sure.
for the most part,
Yeah, he can be tough. Occasionally when producing the show, he can be really tough on a guest, and you realize, like, okay, now I have to go back to the green room and talk to that guest and see how they're feeling after that dressing down or that takedown. That was a little challenging, and you kind of go, "Oh, Bill, why can't you be nicer to these people?" It's not what makes him unique. Being nice or being politic isn't what he does. He found his niche, and it's a perfect niche for him, and he does it well. I was never around for it, but I like his podcast. I like Club Random. I watched it when he interviewed Woody Allen, because how many interviews do you see with Woody Allen? Had to watch that, and I've watched more and more of Club Random now. I think he's doing some really good interviews, and he's really able to be himself. You see how he appreciates people. He's like, I heard him say the other day, like, what a great thing. I have always this wide, diverse, and interesting people that come and talk to me, and I get to talk to them. What's better than that? I would agree with him. That's a damn good job. Damn good job if you can get it.
I do appreciate that he surrounds himself with people who are
Ideologically, yeah.
the opposite of him. But I think that's important as well. I think that we've all gotten away from being able to talk to people. It was funny. I was watching, we were rewatching Scrubs. The reboot kind of got us in the mood to rewatch the original episode. I don't
Sure.
know, we're in season 4 or something, and half the characters come out as Republican, like Elliot and stuff like that. And so they start fighting because they're talking about the Iraq War.
Right.
I'm thinking to myself, wow, if they did that today,
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
once that got leaked, I mean, once they all knew how they each other felt, that would be the end of the show
It would be. You're right.
because they wouldn't even be able to be in the same room as each other.
No,
I mean, if
no.
they played it, you know what I mean?
And no one
And
would want to see it on television either. No one would
yeah,
want to see that conflict on television. No.
but back
Yeah.
then they could have different views and
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
coexist and just argue it out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was just funny, like how different it is, and it's exactly, what's wrong with right now. All right, so you get the job at Politically Incorrect. You kind of move through a bunch of different roles there, right? When you're originally there, it's the infancy. So you came on when it was created.
Yep. I was the associate producer. Yeah.
Was it already formed that Bill Maher to like, no, this is the show I want?
Yeah. Yeah. He
Uh,
very much knew that was the show he wanted to do. Yeah. He and Scott developed it, and that was always the show. Back in the day, this would mean nothing to anybody now. But back in the day, they used to say it's the McLaughlin Group on acid, was the kind of like the tight little phrase they would say to describe what the show was. So it was always meant to be a roundtable talk show where comedy was obviously important, but it was a very diverse group of people. And we had a lot of great Republicans and conservatives on that show, and we had a real stable of them. We used to have back in the old times, Laura Ingraham on a lot, and Coulter. A guy named Floyd Brown was wonderful. I realized, and I still realize this, is Republicans want to win and Democrats want to be right. And winning is a better strategy than being right. Because when you're right, not everybody's going to agree with you. When you're right, not everybody's going to like it. They don't want to take the medicine. But when you want to win, winning is always available to you. If you want to win by any means necessary, that's always available as a strategy. I think their strategy is a better strategy than I'm a registered Democrat, been a Democrat forever. Their strategy is a little bit easier to come by than the straight progressive point of view. And the conservatives were great backstage. I always tell people, and I didn't know her as well as Bill knew her really well, but I've met Ann Coulter a few times, and if you met her and you didn't get right into politics with her, you'd have a good time with her. She was a lot of fun. She could put away a few drinks. She could play pool. She could, it was an interesting environment to be around, to see all these variety of people, and met some very cool people too. I met one of my heroes, John Irving. I met the writer. I met a lot of comedians they're very good comedians. Very very strong. Yeah. Well, anyway, but I got off topic there. Sorry.
No, it was great. When you're talking about the topics, did everyone know the topics going in,
Yes.
or okay, so they could prepare ideas
Yeah.
or
No,
whatever?
it wasn't sprung on anybody. The advantage Bill has is he had a team of writers writing for him. So the opinions were always Bill's. The jokes weren't always Bill's. So, and Bill, we have long, lengthy writers meetings, like 2-3 hour meetings every day. Bill would have his blue cards. If something struck him funny in the meeting or struck him as a good point, he would write it down on his blue card. So even though I was only a credited writer for like 1 year, I think. I got a lot of material on the show just because if you say something funny and Bill thinks it's good in the room, he doesn't care where it comes from. He always would write it down. That was fun. Being in that writer's room, it was a great writer's room. There were some really, really bright guys in there from the top down, from Scott Carter on down. A guy named Chris Kelly was the head writer for many years, very gifted comedian. A very unusual guy named Brian Jacobsmeyer, who said little, but when he put it on the page was hilarious. Billy Martin's been there for a long time, a very funny guy. A lot of very funny, very smart guys. Like Bill was saying about interviewing interesting people, it's like being in a room with a lot of smart, a lot of funny people is not a bad job. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Some of the best experiences I've had in show business were in that room. So
In your head, do you have the best guests that you would have back, some of the worst guests, and like
sure.
what made
Usually,
someone like a bad guest?
not talking was what made someone a bad guest. If someone just wasn't talking, that you could say anything, stupid or smart or anything, and that would be a good guest. Musicians almost always made the worst guests for us for some reason. Musicians are just there. They live in their creative world, and it just does not. if they aren't talking about music, I guess they don't, I'm sure there are many exceptions to that rule, but they just didn't. Like Ben Folds was on one time, and I like Ben Folds, but he didn't say a word. And in the last segment, he said, I've been told if I don't say anything, I'll be the first guest to say nothing on this show. So that's why I'm talking now. And so he was pretty rough. John Waters, the film director, was always an excellent guest. Always a very, very funny guest. Said, and was not only funny, because funny isn't enough necessarily, but funny and very opinionated. He didn't have the typical run-of-the-mill opinions. It was always something interesting. It's always something a little off kilter, which was amazing. Ariana Huffington was a great guest. She surprised, she was always surprised us with who she would invite to her house after the show. One time, a great panel. One time we had Florence Henderson on with, oh my God, Marilyn Manson. If you remember that shock rocker, Marilyn Manson. They got along really well. And she treated him like a friend of her son's or something, just like, oh dear, calm down. It was very, very good. Yeah, I mean, so many great guests. Whenever there's a guy named Joe Queenan who was on a number of times. He was a writer, but he was just so sarcastic and casted John aside everything. He was always funny, always good. But we had a lot of great guests. I mean, we were really lucky. There became a time when, unfortunate thing about the show was when it got bought by ABC, there were a lot of profit participants in the show. The show was co-owned by Comedy Central, HBO, CAA had a packaging deal, HBO Downtown, and ABC itself. So like 5 profit participants. So it was very hard to turn a profit on the show, even though we had good ratings. We had some good ratings. I'm not saying we beat Letterman and Leno on a regular basis, but we would occasionally, and we were competitive. And they still couldn't make it. And they really needed the ratings to grow. And when I was running the show, it came down to, well, we've got to get Tom Cruise in the show. And it was like, Tom Cruise is not going to do this show. There's just nothing we can do. We'd have to change the show fundamentally and probably have a new host to get Tom Cruise in the show. And I remember that one ABC executive telling me, well, we've got to get him on the show. That's just, if the show has to change, the show has to change. The show wasn't going to change. So they didn't renew my contract at one point, and that was the end for me there. It was a damn good ride. What else can I tell you about that? Anything else?
It ended like in 2002. When did you leave?
I left in 2000.
2000. Okay, so you're almost there the whole ride. Was there more to the transition of just shifting other than them wanting Tom Cruise and all that? It was major, like ABC just wanted an overhaul. And
They didn't want, I don't want to say they wanted an overhaul, but they just needed the show to be different so they could turn more of a profit, is what I believe. And that's from inside, it seemed that way to me. They made a bad deal for the show and they couldn't turn a profit. They're business people, and they have to turn a profit and they couldn't do it on the show. So that's what, I don't think it was Bill's late comments about 9/11 that did the show in at all. I think it was really a financial decision.
they seem to blame it on that, or at least that's
Yeah.
the overall rumor.
Yeah, they seem to blame it on that. And some of that may be true. I don't know, but it just seemed more financial to me.
And your role at this point, though, when they let you go, was co-executive producer or
No, I was executive producer.
executive producer?
I was
Okay.
running the show, yeah, at that time. I had a great ride, and Scott, bless his heart, kept promoting me all along the line, and Bill wanted to promote me, and Bill wanted me as the showrunner after Scott left. So that was great. It was a great run, and it was a great show to be a part of. There was a time when I'm now divorced, but when my wife and I were living together in New York City, and I was on Politically Incorrect, and she was working on Saturday Night Live, and it felt like we weren't, but it felt like we were bigwigs in New York. We'd go do our shows all week, and then I'd meet my wife like 1:32 in the morning at the cast party after SNL, and we'd stay there till like 5, and then we'd walk home and get our H&H bagels and our New York Times and go to bed and wake up sometime Sunday afternoon. And it was great fun. It was a good time in my life.
Those SNL parties I hear were pretty crazy.
I never experienced too much craziness there. My wife was a script supervisor and then associate director there, and she hung with the production folks more. So you'd see a lot of celebrities there, but I didn't hobnob. And I'm not a great schmoozer. I don't implicate myself where there are celebrities. I don't do that.
When you're showrunner, or even like probably in your other roles coming up, in terms of when you're booking, I assume you have to kind of pay attention, or you try to at least get the right comedian and this political person, and
Yeah.
it's like a little like a wedding seating chart, I'd imagine.
Yeah, For politically incorrect, we had very good talent bookers in the show, and we had four, you have four slots. So you always had to have a conservative, you always had to have a celebrity, always had to have a comedian, and then the fourth slot could be a wild card. You could double up, but we tried a couple times to do shows with all comedians, and that didn't work. Didn't work very well. It was too many people just competing for laughs and not having a substantive conversation. So that really didn't work for us. Don't have a conservative there. You got everybody, it's kumbaya, everybody's agreeing with one another, and that's no good. You had to have a celebrity because we're on television. You need the celebrities to get the eyes on the screen.
Do you have any moments that you recall in your head where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that person said that?
Oh God, there's so many that I can't pick any out really. I'll go back to John Waters for a second. There was one time there was a conservative on the show. I can't remember who the conservative was, but Bill was saying he was trying to say he wasn't a racist, this conservative. And Bill said, like, have you ever been afraid of a black person? He goes, not, and the conservative goes, not because of the color of their skin. And then John Waters just sits there and goes, have you ever met Little Richard? And it was just like it was uproarious laughter, and it was very funny, and at poor Little Richard's expense. But again, John Waters was very funny on that show. A
Yeah.
lot of people would say things you wouldn't expect. I didn't expect Ariana Huffington and Al Franken to become good friends. I didn't expect that. Florence Henderson getting along with, Marilyn Manson. That was not expected. There'd be some very interesting combinations there. And we did an election year where we had, the term strange bedfellows. We had Ariana Huffington and Al Franken in bed together. They would do commentary from the conventions. And we also had Chris Rock out at the conventions as a kind of a commentator. Those were good times. You look back, we couldn't book that anymore. Chris Rock's enormous. Al Franken's been in Congress. Ariana Huffington's doing her own thing. It's like you couldn't get that group together again. It was great.
That is awesome. And you're right. I mean, it is funny when you look back on when you certain groups like that show or even just certain movies, you're like, how did they
How did that
work?
happen? Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
all being in show business as long as I've been. Like when people say like, why aren't there better movies? And I'm thinking like, do you know how amazing it is that anything gets made ever? Do you realize how impossible it is to get a movie made? If it's pretty good, you're way ahead of the game. But it's hard to get things done. I saw a lot of shows that did not sell. I've done a lot of pilots too that did not go to series. It's tough. It's not easy.
I think most of the stuff just never even sees the light of day. I'm sure
No.
there's some amazing things that
Oh,
never.
there's one if you can. I think it's on YouTube. Conan O'Brien did a show many years ago, a sitcom pod called Lookwell. Have you ever heard of this? Lookwell?
No.
It's with Adam West, and Adam West plays an actor who was a former TV detective called Brannigan, I think was his cop's name. He's now teaching acting in Hollywood, but he still thinks he can solve crimes along the way. It had Conan's sensibility, and it was brilliant show. Only a pilot, never went to air, and it's really really funny. If you ever catch it on YouTube, that's well worth watching.
I will try and check that out. That does sound hilarious. All right. So after politically incorrect,
After Politically Incorrect, I had an overall deal for 2 years at 20th Television. So that's the syndication arm of Fox. I developed a late night show, and I developed two daytime talk shows and a third that was kind of alternative kind of show. Problem with an overall deal is you make pilots, and it's very hard to get pilots on in syndication. Produced four shows in 2 years. And I was coming from Politically Incorrect, where you're producing 5 shows a week. I produced four shows in 2 years. And everybody's like, wow, you've produced a lot in the past 2 years. I was like, I have? I produced nothing in the past 2 years. I've been sitting on my thumbs all the time. But I worked with some very nice people there. And then after that, I think I went away and I worked with Bill Nye the Science Guy up in Seattle for a show that didn't get that far called The Eyes of Nye, but it was kind of a follow-up to Bill Nye the Science Guy. And I learned a lot about science. And Bill's when someone says someone's the genuine article, Bill is the genuine article. Like he cares deeply about science. You couldn't get anything scientifically wrong on his show. He would really never allow that. A very, very nice guy. I spent a lot, so I was away from my family in Seattle working and going back and commuting back and forth. And I went to see a lot of Marlins games with him. Went out for clam chowder a lot with him. He was a really great guy too. It was fun to do it. The show was not successful, but it was really fun to work with the people and some great people up in Seattle too. There's talented people everywhere, not just LA and New York. There's really talented people everywhere. It was a short little reprieve there, and then I came back to do the pilot for Best Week Ever, which was great fun, but very disappointing because we did the pilot and I called in a lot of favors for people to be on the show, to, be commentators on the show. And I called in a lot of favors to get people writing on the show. And we did a terrific pilot. And then the powers that be at VH1 were like, okay, we're going to do this show in New York. And I was like, but I live in LA. What do you mean you're doing the show in New York? Like, yeah, we're going to do the show in New York. I was like, so I'm not doing the show, am I? They're, no. I was like, okay, great. I'm glad I put all that sweat equity into this thing. And, but that's, as they say, show business. I worked with Fred Graver, who was kind of the executive overseeing the show, and he was great fun to work with. That was an interesting experience. And then I went on to do many pilots, and I think the Pickup Artist came first, I believe. That was on VH1.
With Eric Von.
Eric Von Markovic, Mystery, this is the name he goes by. That was great fun. I mean, I've had a lot of fun in my career. My career has been ups and downs, but it's been a lot of fun. That show was fun because the executive working on that show was like, well, this guy, Mystery, he can get guys laid as a the pickup artist. He teaches guys how to be pickup artists. He's like, this guy can get nerds laid like in a weekend seminar. I was like, we have to figure out how that doesn't happen on the show because we have to do 13 episodes. And I'm like, don't worry, the way I'm going to cast this show, the guys I'm casting will not be pulling chicks in the first night. Trust me. I cast real nerds, guys that really had trouble connecting with women. So we made it much more. I don't think anybody's sympathetic to guys getting laid. I don't think that's a terribly sympathetic premise. So we cast really nerdy guys and made it more about connecting with women. And some of the guys couldn't talk to women, just literally could not talk to women, and had to be taught how to do that and had to be taught how to like really make a connection, make a meaningful connection. So it was more about that. When people know that show, it's usually couples that watch it together, which I'm pretty proud of because didn't set out to be a show for couples. It was a show for, guys, wanted to see guys picking up chicks. So it worked out. It was a much deeper show than that. It was fun. Shot the whole thing in Austin, Texas, because it was a hidden camera show. And there are only certain states where both parties don't have to consent to be on camera. So in most, like California, both parties have to consent to be on camera. They both have to know they're on camera. Whereas in Texas, only one party has to know they're on camera. So you can be in a nightclub with hidden cameras and no one's the wiser. So being in Austin, I don't know if you've ever been, but Boston's a wonderful city. I don't know how anybody ever graduates from University of Texas because there's so much to do in Austin besides go to school. There's a great nightclub scene. There's a great bar scene. There's a great music scene, great food, all sorts of things. So it was being there for a month was just fine.
How did all the contestants fare?
In life or afterwards? I'm a producer that I keep in touch with a fair amount of my contestants, which is probably not the wisest thing to do, but I have a soft spot in my heart for contestants. They've done pretty well. I don't keep up with a lot of guys from there. The one guy was a guy named Joe Doyle. He was kind of a heavy set, really, really gregarious, really kind of nice, sweet guy. He's married now. He has a kid. He's been working for Zillow for several years, I believe now, and it all worked out for him. And the guys definitely did better with ladies after the show. I know that. They've done pretty well. I wasn't a part of the second season because I was on to something else by then.
American Inventor is something you did.
American Inventor, yeah, that was a brief stint. It was Fremantle Television. It was kind of a regular reality show where they were finding people who had an invention and wanted to sell their invention. And it played off like a regular, reality show until the last 2 episodes were in a studio. So in spite of the fact that I hadn't been in a studio in 5 years, I came in as the studio guy. So I was the co-executive producer in charge of the studio stuff when they went to the studio. So I only did a couple episodes of that for the second season. I worked with a showrunner. The showrunner there was a guy named Clay Newbill, who's an extremely nice guy. He's run Shark Tank forever and a day now, but a really nice, generous guy, easy to work with, a pleasure to spend time with. The show was a little challenging. It was with Simon Cowell's company, is it Psycho Productions? Is that what they are? Yeah, I think so. There was a little bit, lost in translation. The Brits do reality television very different than the Americans do reality television. So it was a little, not clashing of cultures, I wouldn't say, but just a little translation that had to go on there to get the show to work. That was good too. And then what else after that?
Did you get to meet Simon Cowell? Because he was pretty probably, is this the American Idol heyday ish?
Yeah,
He's just,
yeah, it is. Yeah. I didn't get to meet him in person, but I got to meet him on the phone. We had big phone conferences every occasionally. And he was a gentleman and very professional, had very keen opinions, but they were, it seemed right on the mark. He knew what he was doing. He's not a dumb guy, very smart guy.
this was Shark Tank-ish. You mentioned the guy went on to Shark Tank,
Pre
but
pre
this,
Shark pre
but
Shark
this
Tank.
was, but I'm saying, yeah, I'm saying this before Shark
Shark
Tank.
Tank-ish. Yeah, it was Shark Tank-ish. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Were they imitating like the British versions, like Dragon's Lair or whatever they were called
Oh,
over there?
maybe it was definitely they definitely had to sell the inventions to a panel of experts, so that was very Shark Tankish. And then they had to go on because the show seemed flawed to me because when I heard, even when I was started working on it, when I heard American Inventor, I was thinking, oh, it's going to be like someone they're putting through like a Thomas Edison contest. Like, okay, this week's challenge is you have to invent something that does this. This week's challenge is you have to invent, and it wasn't that. It was just they have one invention they're passionate about, and then they put them through the rigors of pitching to a panel, and then they have to do the marketing for it, then they have to do the packaging for it, and it was not as it did not seem like it was what was advertised. It seemed just a little different than that. I think it was a little flawed in that way. Fun to work on nonetheless.
Kat Von D.
Kat Von D. Oh, L.A. Inc. That was a really interesting experience. I did more research for that show than I've done for a lot of other shows because I kind of believe you can't, you have to show the people you're working with respect. I have one tattoo from Kat Von D. It's on my left buttock, and it was done. It was done. I can tell that story later, but I'm not a tattoo guy. Is the long and short of it. So I knew nothing about tattoos or tattoo culture or anything else. So I read several books before I took the job and learned as much about the art that I could. And I really appreciate tattoo art, and I really appreciate the artists because what they can do on a moving canvas that won't sit still is really remarkable. And Kat is a wonderful. We had four wonderful artists in the show at the time. It was Kat Von D, who's a force of nature, Corey Miller, who's kind of an old school black and gray tattooist from LA, very gifted, and also one of the coolest guys. Like you feel less cool when you're around Corey because he's so damn cool. He just wears a black t-shirt and black jeans and big biker's boots every day, and he's just calm and cool, and he's just the greatest. And then there was Hannah Aitchison, who's a gifted artist, and Kim Say, who's also very gifted. So we had three women and one man, which is unusual for the tattoo world. It was basically when I started the show, I did one season of the show, and what it was interesting people getting interesting tattoos by interesting artists. And that was like, it was a TLC show, and it made a lot of sense for TLC, but it was just it was interesting, an interesting procedural. And the network slowly wanted more out of the store drama. They wanted to be a little bit more like The Hills, if you can remember The Hills. They wanted to be a little bit more like The Hills, where this drama is going on. And that was not what Corey was going to do, not what Kim was going to do, not what Kat wanted to do, not what Hannah wanted. None of them wanted to explore their personal lives. They wanted to show their professional lives and their art. The show went through some growing pains, and all those original people left, and they brought new people in that had more lives that they wanted to explore. It was a fascinating show, and getting to watch these artists work was a real honor. Kat and I had one big fight that we then got over because she can be a little mercurial, but she is gifted. She's not only a gifted artist, she plays piano, classical piano, and she's gorgeous. She's just really, really interesting. But again, these people come from a very different, walk of life. Like Corey Miller one time was telling us a story about how one of his partners in the tattooing game got shot point blank shot in the head, right in front of Corey. There's an underworld element to tattoos, which I'm not suggesting in any way that all tattooists are involved in these kind of things. But Corey told us this story. It was like, wow, I can't relate to that at all. I don't know. I don't know where that was or how that happened. It's really rock and roll. Can be dark sometimes. It was fascinating. I had a great time and worked with some great people again. You always do. You work with some people you forget about, but it's the great ones you remember.
It sounds fascinating. And then you were about to say what tattoo was on your
Oh,
butt?
so Kat wanted to. She had been married to Oliver Peck, who's a renowned tattoo artist. Also, she wanted to compete with Oliver a little bit after their divorce. Oliver, I think, had the world record for most tattoos in a 24-hour period, and Kat decided she wanted to beat the record. So she wanted to do the most tattoos, highest number of tattoos in 24 hours. In order to do that, you have to do like one tattoo, just one tattoo for everybody. So she did the LA from the LA Inc. logo. That was what everybody got, and it was for charity. So she charged everybody $20 for a tattoo, and to get a tattoo from Kat Von D for $20 is like the bargain of a lifetime, because when you get a tattoo from Kat Von D, you're probably spending thousands of dollars to get a major piece of art from Kat at this point. For many of those artists at this point, they're all the best at their game. We're filming and we're getting news coverage because she's trying to break the world record, and she goes for 24 hours straight. So we were open and shooting in the store for 24 hours. What I realized slowly was everybody on the team, everybody behind the camera was getting a tattoo also. And I was sitting there, I'm going like, well, what kind of leader am I if I don't get a tattoo? I'm going to be the shittiest leader in the world if I don't pony up and get a tattoo. So I was like, okay, give me a tattoo. And they're like, where? I was like, on my ass. It's going to have to be on my ass because I don't want to, I'm not a tattoo guy. It would be insulting. Literally, I pull down my pants. A guy has to shave my ass, which is humiliating, in front of all these people in the store, shave my ass. And then I go to lay down so Kat can give me the tattoo. And I kid you not, the Fox 11 affiliate in LA goes live as I'm laying down to get tattooed. So I was like, I hadn't told my wife I was getting a tattoo. When she found out like 6 months later I had a tattoo, she was pissed. She was not happy. But then my lay down Kat was like, I know your wife doesn't like tattoos, so I'm going to give you a light tattoo. And I was like, sure thing, Kat, whatever you want. And there I was on television getting my ass tattooed. I'll always have it to remember that experience by. So that was really fun. The team got tattoos. I was amazed. Like everybody pointed out that's one of the things that would happen to people if they worked on the show was they'd start with no tattoos and they'd leave with like 20 tattoos. They'd have like all these tattoos after they worked on the show for a while.
That's amazing. I was just at my first tattoo parlor. I didn't get a tattoo, but I was with someone who wanted to. I got to go and get a tattoo. I made an
Right.
appointment. I'm going to get the number 33, because it means this. And like, all right. So we hung out there, and then other people would come in and go, yeah, one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Cool world.
Did you spend more time with Paris Hilton on my new BFF than
Personally, did I spend more time with her
than maybe some of the other people you worked with?
No, I spent less time with Paris Hilton than I did with other people. And that was kind of by design. The way I set that up was I had a supervising producer who spent more time with Paris than I did. And I thought because like I was like, I'm a middle-aged dad, and she's not a middle-aged dad, although she's becoming a middle-aged mother now, isn't she? But she was a young woman, and I thought a young woman would relate to her a little bit better. So I had my supervising producer spend more time with her. But Paris was fine. For all that people say about Paris, she was just fine. She showed up, she did her work, she was fine. It was an interesting show to do because it was a big show for the network at the time, and the network was terrific. Liz Gately was the head of programming at MTV then, and she was wonderful. We cast the show, obviously, people that really love Paris and people that legitimately wanted to be Paris's new BFF, which is kind of ridiculous because if you know about Paris Hilton, she goes through BFFs like regularly. The fact that they thought they would actually become a BFF was a little crazy. But we cast all these people. It was, I think, 16 people total. It was 14 women and 2 gay men. The one thing I learned is that people who want to be on a reality show have daddy issues. And I was a daddy. So I got hit on by several women in the cast, which like I was not expecting because I'm no Adonis and I'm no pickup artist and I'm not. But then like I had some interesting offers on that show, which was very weird. But there again, I kept in touch with a lot of the contestants, and now several of them are married with kids, and they've just gone on to have sensible, nice lives. It was a wild ride because wherever you went with Paris, it was a scene. I remember one time we were in Tokyo. We went to Tokyo for a week with the show, and it was actually more like 3 or 4 days, but it was for an episode. And we were at the Japanese VMAs, and we were at a party, an after party, on the roof of a skyscraper in Tokyo. Paris always had a bodyguard with her. That was not enough for this party. And the Japanese have a different sense of personal boundaries. So when the Japanese want to get close to someone, they really it's like they really get in a group of people. So it was me and one of the execs from the production company and her bodyguard, and we were holding hands and like literally leaning back just to keep the crowd away from Paris. And I was like, I'm on a skyscraper in Tokyo with Paris Hilton trying to keep tourists or kind of trying to keep fans off of her. This is not what I expected when I went to college. This is definitely a different experience than I expected. It was pretty crazy. And wherever you went with her, it was always a scene, always paparazzi, always, that kind of thing going on. It was a really fun show. I mean, that show, again, doing research for shows, like when I did The Pickup Artist, I read Neil Strauss wrote a great book called The Game, which is essentially Mystery's whole system of being in the seduction community, laid out in it's built like a Bible. It has a black cover. Mystery's words are in red in the book. It's just like a Bible, and I used that to kind of plot out the whole show. And then, when I did LA Ink, I read a lot of research about tattooing. And then when I did Paris Hilton, I read Queen Bees and Wannabes, which was the book that Mean Girls was based on. I read that, and then I put together challenges based upon, just mean girl dynamics, just things that would get girls fighting, really. So we had a lot of drama on that show. One of my best challenges there was at the end of the show, there were 4 contestants remaining, and we had an elimination ceremony, and Paris said, I can't eliminate any of you right now, so I'll do this one-on-one. And then one-on-one, she went to each, it was 4 women that remained. She said, I'm sorry, but you're the ones being eliminated today. And then she kind of did it very politely, hugged and kissed them and all that kind of stuff. And then we sent the contestants out one by one after eliminated them all. And we sent them all out to wait for their car to take them back to the hotel with a producer there. And the producer starts talking to them, and they don't know they're on camera, and they're all on camera. And then, of course, like 2 of the young ladies were like, well, that's okay. I didn't figure I'd win. And then 2 were like devastated. And that was, and the challenge was, how devastated are you going to be when Paris eliminates you? So the 2 that were uniquely devastated were not eliminated. And the 2 that were like, yeah, I didn't figure I'd win, they were eliminated. So that's how it worked. And that was a great challenge. It was a really twisted challenge, but it was fun.
You're cruel. You're a cruel man, Douglas Wilson.
To be a reality producer, you have to have a little cruelty working. You have to have a little bit.
If you could go back and do it again, would you pick a less eclectic career, or did you love how eclectic it was? I mean, I would pick eclectic every time.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, and I even did later in my career. I did a couple game shows, and I may do a game show again in the future. They were all great fun. I love having an eclectic career. It was wonderful. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Thanks for sharing all these stories. I know there's a million more, but thanks for sharing all these stories with me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. It's been very nice.